My name is Mary. I am an admission counselor here at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. So if you've been receiving some emails, they were probably from me about this day. So thank you so much for coming. We hope you've been having a great time. I am just going to start this panel off by introducing three of our students that we have. We were able to get one student from each class to give you a student perspective of what law school is like. So for the 3L class, we have Brittney Mortensen. For the 2L class, we have Abigail Pinesh. And for the 1L class, we have Malin. So I will do a little intro for each of them. Brittney Mortensen is a third-year law student here at the S.J. Quinney College of Law. She received her undergraduate degree from the University of Utah in communication. She has worked in a variety of legal offices where she has assisted with I-601A waiver applications, conducted research and drafted pre-hearing statements for asylum applications, and helped prepare applications for EOIR and USCIS. She has also volunteered and worked as a law clerk with the U.S. Department of Justice, EOIR, at the Salt Lake Immigration Court, where she researched and analyzed motions and decisions on applications for relief from removal. Abigail Pinesh is a second-year law student. She graduated summa cum laude with her Bachelor of Science in Management and Industrial Relations from Ernest C. Treves School of Business at the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut. While in undergrad, she was a member of the varsity women's lacrosse team and graduated a year early. She has worked as a legal and/or policy intern with Save Our Canyons, Earth Law Center, Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance, and this summer will be a law clerk in Washington, D.C. with the Humane Society of the United States. In her spare time, she likes yoga and boating in the Finger Lakes region of New York. Malin is a first-year law student. He received his Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from Utah Valley University. As a student at UVU, Derek was a student athlete who competed in Division I wrestling. Prior to attending law school, he worked at a residential treatment center where he helped teenage boys with depression, trauma, anxiety, processing deficiencies, substance abuse problems, and learning differences. His interests include child development, evolutionary psychology, and mixed martial arts. So I'm going to turn the mic over to each of these individuals to talk a little bit about what they've been involved in here at the S.J. Quinney College of Law, what their experience has been like. Please note that we do have the Slido code listed up there. So if you think of questions that you really would like to ask for a student perspective of what law school is like, submit those questions and we will ask those after their introductions are over. So Brittney, you can start.
Okay, so like Mary said, I'm a 3L here. This year I'm a law fellow for the pro bono initiative. I was like, I'm not supposed to use acronyms. The pro bono initiative. So I'm a fellow. And then last year I was a student director for one of the pro bono clinics. And then I also last year was the president of the Student Immigration Law Association and the vice president of the Minority Law Caucus, which, as you can see, like, I'm white, but they encourage everyone to join, and it's a really great organization. One of like the biggest and most well-established student groups here on at our school. Is there anything else? No.
No.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, my name's Abby. I'm a 2L here. I am currently working with Western Resource Advocates, which is a nonprofit organization working in environmental issues. I am currently co-president of the Animal Rights Organization here. I'm secretary of the Student Litigation Society and 2L rep of the Natural Resources Law Forum here. So I spent a lot of my time doing environmental law, obviously, at the U, and 1L year is really exciting, but I'm a little excited to be past that. 2L year is busy, but you get to really get into the things that you're interested in, and I think that's really important and something that you guys should remember going forward.
Hi, I'm Derek. I'm a 1L. Like these two just said, they're kind of involved in a little bit more, being 2Ls and 3Ls. As a 1L, you're doing a lot of the difficult studying and writing your memos and whatnot. So there's not a lot of extra stuff I do other than the classwork. But that's because I like to spend my free time doing other things like going to the gym, going on hikes. Like I like to continue to live my life a little bit. And so For the next year, though, I applied for a fellowship. I'm going to apply for law review. Like, that's the year that I'm going to get more involved with these different things. But the first year, I decided to just focus on my grades and, try and get good grades.
Okay, well, on that note, that's a perfect segue. What is a key factor in maintaining your work-life balance as a law student?
I'll just speak to that first, I guess. So I think it's important, like going into law school, to decide like what experience you want to have. So I knew going in I wanted to do immigrations, and knew that I didn't really want a big firm job. So I didn't have to be in the top 10% of my class. That being said, I still worked very hard and got good grades, but I was very committed to keeping myself sane. I'm a very anxious person, and I was like, I have to have that commitment to just like being well-rounded. It's difficult because it is very demanding, but it's doable. So I think just like being committed to that and realizing that, and even if you like do want to be in the top 10%, realizing that like exercising and taking care of yourself is actually like exercising for an hour, that's going to be better for you, and you're going to actually do better because you are like committed to your well-being, and you will like do better in class. So I think that's really important to realize that's also essential.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for me was not really listening to what my peers are doing. I'm obviously not trying to go to a big firm either, so when I'm listening to my friends that are working like extra hard to be in the top 10%, it's hard not to be like, oh, maybe I should be reading that, or I should be studying that much too. But that's just not who I am and not who I'm trying to be. I would be up in the canyon right now taking advantage of this powder day if I could. So, I mean, everyone has different expectations and goals, and I think it's a matter of getting to know yourself and knowing what you want out of this.
Being third, I'm going to just be repeating a lot of what they're saying. They say a lot of good things. So kind of piggybacking off that, I think there's a couple pitfalls, and that's, you get told that you got to do this amount of studying and all that. And it's true, you got to do a lot, but the pitfall is that you won't be able to balance and that you won't have the time. The top of my class, she has 2 kids. So it's like there's a lot of single guys or single girls that have no kids, and they should have way more time, theoretically, but it's just how you manage your time and how you focus with it. So you can totally live a balanced life if you want to. It's just the pitfall of deciding that you don't want that. So it's always been a big priority for me. I didn't even make that a choice. I just said I'm going to be balanced, and whatever happens, happens. So.
Okay, we have a hard-hitting question here now, so prep yourself. Is there any regrets, no matter how small, that you have about choosing to go to law school at Utah? And you can be honest.
For me, it's not a regret of going to Utah for law school. Sometimes I'm like, why the heck did I go to law school in general? But then that's when you need to take a step back and you're like, there's a reason I'm here, there's a reason I've done this and invested all this time and money and energy into this. And it's because you want to dedicate yourself to doing something bigger than what you're doing before. And I think it's really important to keep that in perspective.
Yeah, I think law school, I don't have any regrets coming to the U. I love the U. I think any issues that I have with law school is like with the institution of law school and how it's developed in the United States, which is like a whole different thing. But like I've loved the U. I love the community here. So I don't have any regrets coming here. Again, sometimes law school's difficult, but you'll have times where you're like, why am I doing this to myself? And that's when you have to like take a step back and be like, okay. I was thinking the other day, I was like thinking about how like my brain has changed in the past 3 years. And it's like amazing and it's really cool just how much I've learned and how like my skills and have kind of developed and changed. And so I definitely think it's worth it, even though it's difficult.
I'm You're gonna think I'm a liar, but I love everything about law school. It's like I haven't one time thought I don't like it. Like I come here every day with a smile on my face, and everyone's like, "What is wrong with him?" But I love it. I love the class, the professor. I love the discussion, and I have noticed my brain changing too. It's kind of annoying for people in my life. You know, like I see a trampoline, and I'm like, "That's a tort," and I don't ever want to own one anymore. So, but you know. My daughter's mother is like, well, she's getting one. But so it has its downfalls outside of here, but I love it. Everything about it. Yeah, it's the first time that I've actually enjoyed every bit of school. You know, my undergrad, there was those days where I was like, I could probably skip that class. But here I'm like, I don't even want to skip the class because then I'll miss out on that discussion where I learn just so much about life and everything. So I might be the different person, but I love it.
All right, this next question is directly for Abigail. Can you describe the intersection between environmental law and the conservative politics in Utah? What are some challenges?
I mean, it's tricky. I come from rural upstate New York, so it's difficult coming here where things are a little bit more conservative. I think they've been just overall more conservative in the past than they are now also. I've noticed really, really strong backing for environmentalists down here. You guys probably know there's a couple lawsuits going on right now with Bears Ears and Grand Staircase. But I've worked for a couple organizations that are part of fighting that and joining forces and standing up for the bigger picture and all these beautiful landscapes we have in Utah. So while there is some pushback, there's just as many more liberal and people that are excited about being able to climb and ski and trail run and do all these amazing things that we can do in Utah that are pretty unique to where we are. So I don't think it being more conservative here has necessarily really affected anything as much as you would think it would, and I think that it's becoming more liberal every year. Does that answer your question? Maybe.
Okay, great. What is the culture amongst law students? Is it as cutthroat as everyone says? Let's start down with Derek and move this way.
For my class, it's actually not at all. We support each other 100%. We share outlines, and it kind of comes down to like, it's that pitfall. It gets easy to think that it's going to help you to not give one of your classmates like the study guide or whatever. It's like, it doesn't help you at all. Like they're going to find it eventually, and they will study it just as much as you do or more. It doesn't really do anything other than burn that bridge of now that person thinks you're a jerk. So my class is really good with that. We all are great friends, and we all, you know, eventually you find out who the number one in the class is, and like I said, she's just a wonderful woman, and we all love her, and none of us feel resentment or anything. Like we kind of idolize her, and that's because she's a good person, and she would help any one of us, even if it meant that we were going to score higher on an exam. So I don't know if that's the culture that just my class did, or if their classes did the same thing, but you hear those stories and you think like, oh, we're all just against each other. And it is a grind and a competition, but it's like, you know, I have a wrestling background. It's nothing like that. It's friendly, it's cordial. Everybody, we're really good friends, so.
Yeah, I would say that's same for us. For example, I live with one of my best friends from law school who's also environmental law, and we applied for every single job, every single fellowship, everything that could be the same, we applied for it. And one of us would get it and the other wouldn't. And like, man, that's awesome, congrats. And I think that's just how it is for everybody. I'm sure it's a little bit different. The closer to the top of the class you get, it's a little more cutthroat because it depends on your rank. But I think everyone's very supportive and genuinely happy for other people when something good happens. And when something not so good happens, you kind of rally behind them. And it's a really awesome culture we have going here.
Yeah, I think the U has a very good culture as like far as students goes. It's still competitive. Everyone wants to do their best, but it's not like super cutthroat and like, you know, people stealing or hiding things or things like that. That might happen occasionally, but I think that's like very much not the norm. And for the most part, I have like great relationships with my classmates, and I would say it's competitive, not cutthroat. And I think that the U does a really good job at encouraging that behavior.
Great. Okay, so we have several questions that are coming in about housing and where students live. So Can you describe where do law students usually live? Do you guys commute to school, and what is that commute like for you?
Yeah, so I commute from Ogden. That's where my daughter and me live. So we don't do on-campus housing or anything like that. It hasn't been bad, and I've commuted for work before, and I always find the positive in something like that. And the 40-minute drive for me is that time to disconnect from here. You know what I mean? It's 40 minutes where I don't have somebody asking me to do something, or because law school can be stressful, and you have an exam and you're stressed out and whatnot. You have 40 minutes to just decompress, listen to some music, just kind of get your mind off of it. And then the alternative is there's lots of study aids that are, audio. And so I can put on 40 minutes of contracts and just be like, all right, let's just reinforce that feedback loop of contracts and study while I'm driving. And then we have the tracks and the front runner, which if any of you decide to live far away too, that's also an option. They have Wi-Fi and you can study and do everything on there as well. I haven't done that, but it's always an option.
So coming from New York my first year, I rented an apartment without really seeing it, so I kind of went in blind and ended up lucking out. It was beautiful, and then I met some awesome people here. Now I live with 2 law students and an MBA student in a house on 15th and 15th, like maybe 7-minute drive from here, and it's been awesome. So I mean, if anyone needs help also, I'd be happy to give you my number or email, and I could help you find some awesome houses that are available or apartments. There's a ton of houses for rent here, duplexes, and there's a lot of options, and the price range varies too. So, I mean, there's a ton of options, and I'm happy to help with you if you need it.
I think generally living like downtown Salt Lake is a little bit more expensive. But as far as my class goes, we have like so many different options. Like people who live up near Ogden, people who live down in Utah County, lots of people who live here. It just kind of varies. I've lived 3 different places, 3 different years. So I started out downtown and then moved to a different place and then actually moved up to Bountiful. And I think, again, it's cheaper to live not in downtown, but it is nice to live close. It's also one thing to realize that, like, as a law student, your 1L year, you'll be like living here in this building, and you like won't leave a lot because, and you can study different places, but after that, you will start getting jobs, and so depending on where your jobs are, you won't be here all the time, so you can take that into consideration. But like I said, I think like Abby said, reach out to students here and get like the different options. I think there's so many a different variety in every class of people who live close, live downtown, have families, have houses in different areas. So kind of range like all over the valley. I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, well, that was good. Okay, so what is your top study tip for 1L year? We'll start with our 1L resident expert.
For me, it's starting early. There are some students and some of my classmates that study later into the night. For me, I tried that a little bit. I tried to sleep in a little bit and then, say I'll read, con law at 7 p.m. and it's like, good luck. So I start early in the morning, get my cup of coffee, just have it, and it's kind of my routine. And starting early has helped me to where I can get all the really, dense material out of the way. And then that way, as the day goes on, you get tired. And so you want to save the stuff that doesn't take as much brain power till the end. That was just a huge lifesaver for me. Again, it depends on the type of person you are. A lot of people aren't morning people, and like one of the girls that sits right by me, she's like, "You're insane." But she likes to sleep and she studies till midnight, and I think she's insane, so it works out. But that's my biggest tip.
I think my biggest tip would be that it's not going to be the same as it was in your undergrad. I don't know if this is just me, but I put maybe a quarter of the amount of effort I'm putting in now in my undergrad. And I struggled my first semester because I was doing that same amount of work and it just wasn't flying here. So you really need to buckle down, you need to do it, and you need to know that you need to work harder than you did during college.
And I guess my biggest tip would be not to compare how you're doing it to other people, because I think that's a big downfall where you're like, oh, well, they're doing it a certain way and that's better. Like, figure out what works for you, like whether it's studying in the morning or like studying in the evening or getting a lot of it done on the weekend so that you have a little bit more time during the week. Play around with it and figure that out and then commit to that and don't compare yourself to other people.
Great, okay, so what is the relationship with BYU like related to getting jobs after graduation? Is it very competitive? Brittney, we'll start with you since you're closest to getting into the actual workforce.
Yeah, I think it's competitive just because we're the only law schools here, so a lot of people are applying for the same jobs. But I guess I don't really have like too much experience with that. I'm going to a federal job after law school, so I wasn't competing with specifically with people from BYU. As far as during school for law clerk positions, you do compete with BYU students. But I've also loved that because I've worked, different firms I've worked at, I've worked with BYU clerks and they're just people too, but so yeah, I guess I don't have a great answer. It's competitive because the jobs here, just the two law schools here.
Yeah, I don't have too much knowledge about that either. I've never had an issue with it, and I've never heard of anyone else I know really struggling with that, but I might not have the best scope of judgment for that question either.
Similar.
So I will give you my perspective. So I graduated from this law school as well, actually. And I can tell you that there are certain firms in the Valley that will hire someone from BYU and someone from Utah. There are some firms that you do have to compete for those jobs. So I guess the answer is the typical law school answer of it depends. And so, like they said, when you do have two top tier law schools that are within an hour of each other, it's natural to have that level of competition. I think the U has a leg up on BYU in the regard that we are right here with the legal community. We have our legal community right here. You hop on tracks and you're right downtown. I will also say that I know that with some of our clinics, specifically our pro bono clinics that Brittney's involved with, we have BYU students who want to try to volunteer at our clinics. And so because of the availability that we have with that. So, our proximity really helps us out. But yes, it is competitive and it just depends on what firm and what type of job you're looking for. All right, so what are some of the pros and more specifically the cons of having a smaller law school? Bueller.
I know, I'm just trying to think.
So one of the pros of having a smaller law school is you know everybody, and it's really cool to know everyone and build these different connections. And you don't just have I recognize that face, and then you kind of smile at each other as you walk by. You're like, hey Christian, how's your daughter? How was her birthday on Sunday at 4 p.m.? You know what you're talking about, and it's really exciting to be able to be involved in other people's lives. And I don't know, a downside of a small community is you don't get to meet as many different people from different backgrounds. It's kind of just what you would assume with having a larger number of pool of people. When you have a larger number of pool of people, you get to experience different viewpoints and different perspectives, but I feel like we have a really well-rounded group, even though we have about 90 people in our class.
Yeah, I think it's more of a pro than a con. In my undergrad, again, I didn't make any real lifelong friends, but I already know now I've made several, and you're just going through it together. And I study on the fourth floor, and pretty much it's 20 people that are only on that floor every day. So it's it'd be like if you were working in an office building and you only had 20 people that you talk to every day. You become really good friends with them. You discuss birthdays, and it's just really, you support each other, and I really like that. And I don't see where you would I don't think that would outweigh getting a ton more perspective, because I don't think you can really manage more than 100 people in your class anyway. I would challenge you to get to know all 100 of your classmates and tell me that you want more. I think it's a perfect size. So.
And also in regards to your interaction with faculty and staff, I think it's a real benefit that it's small, because you get to know the professors really well, and like they become like mentors, even outside of the scope of like the class that they're teaching you. And they really get to know the student body as well, which is like it's a huge pro. So I can't really think of a con, but I don't have a comparison, so.
All right, so are most students young, or do most have previous career experience before coming to law school?
I can speak to that a little bit. So I was 21 when I came in, 1L year, and our median age was like 27 maybe. So I was obviously on the younger spectrum of that, and a lot of people did have experience coming in, and I almost regret not taking a year to either travel or work a little bit, but there's a lot of pros also to coming in and having more time just to do what you want to do after law school. But I don't regret coming in on the younger side either. I've met a lot of people that are super awesome and really mature and have helped me grow as an individual.
I don't know what my median age was. I can't remember. I think it was like fairly high, maybe like high 20s. My class had quite a few older people who were like, this is like their second round at a career. And then, in between, people who had worked for just a few years and then come, and then just pretty few people who were coming straight in from college. But I liked that because it was like a wide perspective of people. So you gotta, I love like the older people in our class, have families and children, kind of act as like mothers and fathers, and I really like that.
Yeah, I think our class median is 28 or something like that. So, but your law school is so different. So it doesn't necessarily matter if you had, we have people in my class that have their masters. One was a professor. I think she has her PhD. It's like, that was kind of intimidating at first. I'm like, I got a bachelor's, but it didn't matter because law school is different. So you're back to square one with each other. But then you can share all those wonderful experiences. Like she can teach me a lot more about different things other than law school. Because even though you have so much to learn here, like I guess your brain is learning to just learn everything. And so I learned a lot about various topics that have nothing to do with the law just by talking to them. And that just makes the environment so fun and interesting. I don't get bored here because I'm just reading constitutional law. Like, I'll talk to somebody else that went and did math or computer science or something like that. And it's very interesting to me, so.
Great, so we have a question about class schedules and what the typical 1L schedule's like. How does that change in 2L and 3L? So I think what we can do is, Derek, maybe you can talk about the 1L schedule, Abby talk about the 2L, and Brittney talk about the 3L schedule.
Okay, this first semester is kind of a blur. But right now, so usually it's 2 classes a day. My first class starts at 10:30 on Monday, so not a super early start. That goes till noon. We have lunch, and then I have property in the afternoon. That starts at 1:30 to 3. That's pretty much everybody's Monday schedule their first year. And then Tuesday is very similar. Wednesday is our most packed day because we have 3 classes. It starts at 9 a.m. and then goes till 10:15. Then we have 10:30 class till noon, lunch hour, and then we have an afternoon class too. So like Tuesday nights are a little bit tougher because as soon as you're done at 3, then you got to start doing your readings for the Wednesday, and you have a little bit more. But then Thursday, again, it's 2 classes. Friday, it's 2 classes. So the classes really, I felt like my undergrad was like harder. Like the times were weird, and so you had to come and go. But pretty much, once you're here for the day, for the big chunk of the day, regular business hours. And then if you want to go study somewhere else, it's totally optional. I have a lot of classmates that just like to go to a coffee shop. I really love the building, so it's like I pay a lot of money to be in this building. I'm going to use it, so I stay in here. But then some people just want to change a venue. But then there's, some of the classes are more demanding, like our legal methods class when you have the memo. I don't know if any of you know about the memo yet, but it's like the memo. And it's like you don't even have to do as much as probably most of us do, but we just obsess about it, and that's why you're here, because you're obsessive. So that class starts to carry over, It seems like it's only an hour and 15-minute class, but it feels like when that memo's due, it's like a 5-hour class. So that's kind of the 1L year, but again, it's just that time management. the time in class is relatively short, and then, you're prepping for class. That's the majority of the time.
And then 2L year, you kind of intermingle with the 3L students because you get to craft your schedule, which is really cool. You take your concentration like criminal law or environmental law, and you pick the courses that you think will help you understand better and have a good understanding of what you're going to do when you get out. Criminal law is awesome because a lot of the classes that you would take for that concentration are also bar classes, which are something you need to think about. Environmental law, not so much. There's maybe one class that you would want to take for your environmental certificate that are also on the bar. So you need to kind of balance which classes you want to take for bar prep and which ones for your concentration. 2L also gets difficult when you're trying to work also. So I work about 15 hours a week. All my classes are in the morning because I knew I'd be working, and the environmental law classes just happen to work out like that also. So a lot of it comes down to how the schedule is structured and then what plans you have for work during that semester and what hours you can do. And employers are usually really generous about working with you in your schedule, so they know how tough it can be sometimes.
Yeah, so just to kind of go off of all that, so 1L year, you don't have a choice at all. Your schedule's set for you, your professors are set for you, so that's just how it goes. And then 2 and 3L year, there's really, you get to choose everything you take with the caveat that there's like a few more classes that are still required, like you have to take Con Law 2 and Legal Professions, which is like the ethics class. And then I think those are the only other two.
Legal professions.
Legal Professions and Con Law 2?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Legal Professions and then Con Law 2, and then like the graduation requirements. So that's another thing. So you also have to like meet certain requirements that different classes fill, but you just need to like keep that in mind when you're crafting your schedule, 2L and 3L year, and then balancing that with like the bar classes that you want to take. So meaning that material will be covered on the bar, even though it's not a required class. So my 3L year, there's like this saying that like 1L year they scare you, 2L year they work you, and then 3L year they bore you, which I think is wrong because you kind of get antsy your 3L year and you're like, yeah, like I kind of know what I'm doing. I wish I could just be working, and so maybe that's why you're bored. But also, it's been my busiest year by far because you're working, you can work, you can do internships, you're like more established, so you have a little bit more opportunities, but you also have to take class, and then you also have to do your bar application, and so it's definitely busier, but again, time management, it's doable, and you don't have to stay here all the time, you know. It's nice to get out into the real world. Also, yeah, and that's one great thing about working is that employers are really flexible with you. You can work like 10 to 15 hours a week, choose your own schedule because your commitment first is to your classes, but it's also nice to like go out and be like, oh, this is why I'm doing this. Like, this will be fun. I get to do real stuff and will eventually be a real lawyer, so.
And then just filling in a couple things with schedules. So one of you asked about choosing your classes. So your first year, your classes are dictated by the American Bar Association. So you have no choice in what you take, no matter where you are in the country, what law school you go to. If you're at an ABA accredited law school, you're going to be taking the same classes. Your second and third year, you choose what your classes are. Schedules are typically released in the spring semester towards the end of the spring semester, and you get the schedule for the upcoming fall, spring, and summer. So you can plan out your whole next year of your life in spring. Obviously, if you need to change it, we're not going to like force you to stay in those classes, but that's when it's released. All right, so going to the next question, how do you cope with feeling inadequate or overwhelmed?
Therapy. I don't think people talk about this a lot. I'm in a class right now called Mindful Lawyering, which is the first time they have ever taught this. One of our con law professors is like really big into meditation and kind of wellness, and he wants to incorporate that into the law school. And that's one thing we have been talking about recently. Like, through the school, you get like 12 sessions up at the counseling center, and I've used all 12. And like every time I went up, I usually saw a classmate. So I think that there's talk, I mean, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I think there's talks of like bringing a mental health counselor just right here so you don't have to leave. So, and I have no shame in that, and I think people should talk about that. Take care of yourself. It is a competitive place. So, I mean, therapy, exercise, I don't know. You guys wanna-
No, I really like this question, and I'm going to give myself a little pep talk with my answer also. I think that you just need to be grounded, and you need to figure out what does that for you. For me, it's going for a run or talking to my best friend and just like laying it all out there and being vulnerable and open and honest, and then just leaving it there and moving forward and being like, there's things I can do to be better. And if you're okay with the feeling that you have when maybe you didn't put in as much effort, then that's fine. But if you think you could have done better and it's just because you didn't try harder, there's things you can do. And I think it's important to just establish with yourself what you can do better, what you want out of this, who you can go to and talk about it. And a way for me to do that is like just writing it down and just being able to read it again and again and again and putting things into perspective. And just don't be too hard on yourself. A lot of people seem overly confident or like everyone else is doing well, but there are people who are also struggling, and it's really important to just keep that in mind and be true to yourself and not be too hard on yourself.
Yeah, so my experience in mental health has made me thought a lot about this, because you see some of your classmates struggle and you want to help, or maybe you struggle yourself. I've had times where I have too, but so there's those pitfalls that I've been talking about pretty much all day, and it's the easiest traps where you think therapy isn't worth it. You know, that's an hour that I can't get back. I got to go study, and it's like that's a pitfall, and a lot of probably in the room will fall for it, and then hopefully you get out of it. But there's all those traps everywhere, and it's not intentional. Nobody here is trying to make you suffer or anything like that. I don't even think the way it's set up is to make you suffer. I just think you're going to be around a bunch of people that are so hardworking that it makes you naturally feel like you're not working hard enough. And that's why you're all here, is because you work really hard, you obsess over a topic, and you do well at it. And that's everyone around you is going to be just like that. And so you're going to feel like, well, now I'm not different anymore, and also I don't feel good enough like everybody around me. And first time I bombed my midterm. First exam in law school, bombed it. And I was like, well, crap, like wrong place, it's too late. And it was a rough like couple hours, because I was like stressing, because I was like, nobody else bombed it, I bombed it, and now I don't feel good enough to be here. But I got out of that trap, and a lot of that's because I have a lot of therapeutic experience. I went for a run. Like, you do all these tools, and you have all the support around you. Like I said, there's the resources, and I think it'd be great to have one here, but there's classmates from other things. Like, even around me, a lot of my classmates come and talk to me and, you know, kind of vent to me, and it's like, that's what we're here for, and that's what I think this good environment around us helps with. So I think other law schools probably have a much bigger issue with this than here, because our culture is so healthy. I just think we have a really healthy culture, and we support one another.
So I actually have a personal story with this, because I struggled with this pretty much all 3 years of law school. So when you come to law school, those of you who have come and met with me or met with someone from the admission team, I've told you this a little bit, but you come from a background where you would typically have done well in school. You are probably, at least to some extent, a type A personality. So then we throw you in a room and we say, okay, now 5 or 6 of you get A's and the rest of you get B's and C's. And that can be really devastating if you are the type of person who has never gotten anything below an A before. That was me. And I can tell you I had a similar experience as Derek. I had my Civ Pro midterm. And yep, it's always the Civ Pro midterm. And we got it back, and I remember I got something around a 50-something%.
She did better than me.
And after class, I held it together in class, and I walked out to my car after class, and I sat and sobbed in my car like a first world problem brat. And I felt really bad. I mean, I felt horrible. And then that first semester of law school, I got my first C of my entire life that first semester of law school. And I emailed the dean and I told her that I wanted to withdraw from law school. I said, this isn't for me. My classmates are so much smarter than me. Clearly you've made a mistake by admitting me. And she said, well, I'm not going to let you withdraw. And she had me go into her office, and I talked to her, and she said, first of all, the thing that nobody talks about in law school is that everyone is struggling. We like to put on a poker face in law school, like we have it all together and everything's great, and I've got my classes figured out, and I know how to read for my classes and be prepared. Everyone has the same feeling of inadequacy that you have, okay? It's normal to feel that way. And you have to know that going in, that you're not the anomaly. Everyone feels like they're not good enough, and you are. So she sent me up to Bill Richards' office, which he is the fix-all. And I sat in his office. He's a legal methods professor, and he's on the admissions team. So he was one of the people that read your applications to the school and chose you to come here. And he's actually, I think, the lead on that. And he said to me, first of all, I want you to know we don't make mistakes. Every single person who is admitted to this school was chosen to be here for a reason. And so you have to, those feelings, those moments that you feel inadequate, you have to go back and you have to read your personal statement again and remember why you wanted to do this and why you have a passion for this and why you know that this is your path, because that will reignite a fire within you. And you'll realize, you know what, I got to see, it's not the end of my life. It's going to be fine. I'm going to get a job, I'm going to do what I need to do, and I have classmates and I have professors who are here to support me. So, sorry for that rant, but that's a very personal question for me. Okay, moving on. Do you recommend studying in groups?
No. I don't study in groups at all. A lot of my classmates do, and I think it works really well for them, but for me, it doesn't. For me, it was one extra thing I have to add into my schedule. You know, we have their schedule is my schedule, and we have to work it around. And I just didn't have time for that. You know, I'm a single dad. I wanted to go work out. So like, for me, my own schedule, that was enough. So, but it hasn't been a disadvantage to me at all. If I needed something from any of those groups, they would share it with me. You know, everyone's really cool like that. So, you know, even if I've had to miss class for something, I could go to one of those study groups where, of course, they're going to be, I got you no matter what. But if I even asked them, I said, hey, like, can you just email me anything if I miss something important or anything that I miss? And they're like, for sure. So it depends. And I think we touched on this a little bit earlier of don't do what everybody else is doing, because you'll see immediately people will group up and they'll form like what you think is like a power study group. And you're like, damn, they're all going to like... they're gonna kill it. Like they're just studying so good. They're writing on the walls, and like I'm over here by myself, like wondering what reading I'm supposed to do. Like, but don't listen to it. Pitfall. Do what works for you. Do what got you here. I mean, you are gonna have to change a little bit, but what got you here that's your foundation, and you should just build on it. Don't break the wheel. So.
Yeah. I outline. So it's like your study guide for your exams. I outline with a group so that we can take all of our notes and combine them and fill any holes that I may have missed. Usually by the end of the semester, my notes are like, just check with Annie. And I'm like, great, thanks, I'll do that. So I end up studying alone once I have this master outline, and that's what works best for me, because otherwise I'm just listening to my friends and listening to how they analyze this. I'm like, wow, I never would have thought of that, which is great sometimes, but initially I need to go through, get a background myself, and then maybe meet up with them later and go through different problems. There's a lot of exams out there for you to use. So, and like Derek said, it's just a matter of knowing yourself, knowing what works, and not doing what everybody else does.
I also think it depends on the class and how, like, if it's clicking for you, if you need additional help. I think generally for me, I almost always study and like read during the semester by myself. I didn't do much group study, and then at the end of the semester before finals, do like review sessions with people, because it is nice to like compare things and get different perspectives that can fill you in, fill in some of the gaps. But then so I generally did study by myself and then did reviews towards the end. But again, do what works for you.
Okay, what would you recommend as being most helpful in the next 5 months prior to law school? Particular books, relaxation and academic rest? What do you think?
I would not do anything related to the law, honestly. Like trying to prepare yourself, I think just take the time off, finish your undergrad, finish what you're doing, spend time with your friends and family, do fun things so that you're like fully committed to start. I don't know. People might have different opinions, but I think you get so inundated, like, and any prep you do, I don't think is really that worth it. It's like such a fast learning curve. I don't know. I would say just like go all in and having fun and doing things that you love so that you're like recharged and ready to go at it.
Yeah, I would say the exact same thing. Take some time for yourself and be with people you love and doing the things you love, and then come back excited to get back into learning and ready to buckle down.
Yeah, I think if that's an option, that's, it depends on your personality type. For me, the one thing I think I would do differently is that in my undergrad, I didn't do like any writing. My personal statement was like the toughest writing I did before I got here. And I mean, honestly, I would have reviewed a little bit about writing because it's harder to learn it while you're doing it, and that doesn't mean you're studying 4 hours a day on how to write. You're not going back to English, but just to give yourself a little bit, I would have done that differently than having to do that while I'm writing the most important paper I've written yet. And then also, a lot of people, financially, if you have to work and that's how you work, like if you're going to be way stressed out during the school year when you can't work, then I recommend working, because while it might be fun, that's the choice I made, and it's helped me a lot during this semester because I don't have that financial stress that I would have had if I would have taken the summer off. So it depends on your personality type. If you're not the type that's going to get stressed out over the finances, then I think what they said is perfect, because you'll burn out if you are the type that needs that break. Don't be afraid to take it, because really you won't be able to prep too much anyway.
Great. Okay, so what do you guys like about Salt Lake City?
Well, I love Salt Lake. So it's just really interesting. So we obviously have the canyons, like a 20-minute drive from us, and there's a ton of good climbing in there, a bunch of awesome trails to trail run. The ski resorts will be open until like 4th of July this year because we've gotten so much snow. There's just so much to do outside. And I'm sure there's more to do downtown, inside, that I don't know as much about. But the outdoors is just really unique and special. I mean, Moab is a short drive from here too, and that is just one of the most unique places. If you haven't been there, there's 4 or 5 national parks within a day's drive from here. It's really, really unique and special, and it's something that should definitely be taken advantage of.
I grew up here. I grew up in Bountiful, like 20 minutes that way. So I don't know. It feels like home for me. It's like pretty familiar, but there is a lot to do, especially if you like being outdoors. But even if you don't, like, I don't know. You don't have like a ton of time to, to do all sorts of things. But there's like something for everyone here. So.
So I grew up in Ogden, which is about 40 minutes north, and a lot of people that don't know about Salt Lake is the diversity. It's crazy diverse and I think that's largely due to the LDS population, because there's a lot of missionaries that go out and people come to visit, and there's just a ton of diversity in downtown Salt Lake, even more than in Ogden, and I love that. I love going out and meeting like Pride Week is awesome. There's just so many different things to do downtown, and that's why this university is pretty cool, because it's like a 5-minute track ride down there, and tons of firms down there that we go visit. There's just endless opportunities in Salt Lake, and we're right in the middle of everything cool in Utah, which is kind of cool.
I would also add that there's actually, I think in the past 5 years, like the food options here have like really exploded. And because it's diverse and there's a pretty big refugee and immigrant population, there's tons of food, like different kinds of foods. So even growing up here, I didn't realize that, and it being in law school and being in Salt Lake a lot more. And like food is a great way to, stress. It's like stress relief for me. So but like exploring those options, I think that Salt Lake is like that's one thing that's catching up.
Okay, so by raise of hand, how many of you have worked with a professor doing research in a fellowship form or? Any of you? Okay, so I will tell you a little bit about that. So in the spring, generally, you can apply for fellowships for the upcoming year. And there's several different kinds of fellowships you can do. There's Quinney fellowships, which are research-based fellowships where you can find a professor who's interested in a similar legal area that you're interested in, and you can work on a research project with that professor. I would say the Quinney fellowships are probably the most popular. Then there's also Kids Court Fellowship, where you go to a Title I school on the west side of Salt Lake and you work with middle school students, helping them prepare for a mock trial and putting together a mock trial team. That was my fellowship my third year. It's super rewarding to just get out of here and you're helping kids. And I was a teacher before law school, so has a soft spot in my heart for that. There's also library fellows and there are admissions fellows. So the admissions fellows, you work in the admissions office, you help with tours, you help with meeting prospective students. Some of you guys have probably met some of our admissions fellows. So those are generally the fellowships, but you can apply for them in the spring and then they're, huh? Oh, and pro bono, that's of course, yes. Yeah, you want to talk about pro bono fellowship?
Yeah. So right now there's 5 pro bono fellows, and we have like a very large pro bono initiative. We run 10 different clinics, and so as a fellow, you're helping run those clinics, oversee directors of those clinics, doing outreach, things like that. I love my fellow. I think the fellowship's awesome. It's really fun. You're involved. You're meeting people, attorneys, because the attorneys are staffing clinics. Getting to know attorneys is awesome. So.
All right, so last question. Looks like we have time for one more. Out of all the law schools that you guys applied to, why did you decide to come to Utah?
Thanks, guys. I mean, the building I think, speaks for itself. Once I stepped in and saw it, I was like, well, this is very nice, and I would be very comfortable here. And then the other reason was I really love Utah, and I grew up here, and I didn't really want to leave. That was a big one. And then I actually got to meet with Professor Richards before, and I don't know if any of you guys have met with him, but I'm sure he's always willing to talk to people. But I went and met with him and just had a good conversation, and he just really struck me as the exact person that he is. He was very genuine. He taught me a lot about the process and about the U, and it was just, that's the kind of professor I wanted to be taught by, and that kind of solidified it for me. It's just the professors really care, your classmates care, and that I had a buddy that he graduated a couple years ago, and he said all the same thing. So it was like nobody was telling me a different story, and that I really appreciated, and that really helped me with my decision.
I actually had my deposit down at the University of Oregon and an apartment, everything, and I was set to go there. And then I was accepted here, and I was like, oh, guess I'll have a vacation home in Oregon. And it ended up working out. I got rid of that, and I put my deposit down here. And just the building, the culture, the city, the mountains. Salt Lake is truly one of the best kept secrets in the country. So tell your friends that Utah is questionable, so they don't all move out here. But it's just a really special place, and I'm kind of the opposite of Derek. I knew I wanted to get away from home, and I have never felt more at home than I do here. Even when I go back to my parents' house, I'm like, all right, get me back home, and they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, this isn't my home. So I mean, it's just, I've really grown attached to the area, and the school's been great, and I wouldn't change a thing.
So I was the opposite. I was like, I'm from here and I want to leave. So I had my deposit down at the University of Arizona. I had gotten accepted here, but it was my second choice. And then I came and did a building tour, and I was like, okay, and talked to a few professors, and then they upped a scholarship offer for me, and so I just considered financially, and then my experience here, coming to do a tour. I didn't do any admitted student stay. I did that all down in Arizona, and then after all of that, I decided that it was better for me to come here, and I am so glad that I did. I think this is one of the greatest law schools, and it's, I don't know. I don't really buy into the law school system. I have a lot of issues with it, But I loved coming to the U, so.
All right, so let's give our panelists a round of applause. All right, so your next session is going to start in about 10 minutes. Or excuse me, yes. Nope, yes, 10 minutes. I can do math. Okay. It's the financial aid, flat tuition, and residency. It's going to be in the moot court room. If you need to use the restroom, get a drink, please feel free to do that. Also, whoever asked the question about moving from New England to Salt Lake City, come talk to me. I used to live in Boston, so happy to talk to you. So, yeah.
If